Hello everyone and welcome back to my channel. If you're new here, my name is Sierra and today is part 1 of possibly a 3 or 4 part series of how to set goals in 2021 that you can actually achieve. So in today's video, in this part of the video, I'm just going to be sharing my tips for setting goals, my tips for setting goals that you can actually achieve, not setting goals that are so crazy that there's absolutely no way you are ever going to achieve them. So if I were you, I would grab a drink and a snack and we can get right into this. I have my water right here because I plan on talking a lot. So if that's not really what you're into, then I would suggest probably watching another video because this is going to be all of me talking. And then in the next couple videos that I share, obviously not today, but the next parts, I'm going to be sharing what my goals for 2021 are, how I plan to achieve them, and why I'm setting those specific goals. So if that's something that interests you, please stick around and watch all 3, possibly 4 parts of this little how to set goals and achieve them in 2021, and we will get right into the video. So I have all of the things written on my phone so that I don't forget. So if you see me holding up my phone or looking down at it, that is why. So I'm just going to get right into it, how to set goals that are actually achievable in 2021. I have 10 tips to set goals that are actually achievable in 2021. And the first one is base your goals for the next year off of your goals for the previous year. And if you didn't set goals by writing them down the previous year, you can just think to yourself, you know, what are some things that I wanted to achieve last year? What are some things I did achieve last year? Whether it be with your job, with your family, with yourself, whether it be weight loss, weight gain, sticking to a specific diet, sticking to a specific routine, whatever that may be. I would definitely say base it off of the previous year's goals because then you know, one, what you were able to achieve, so you can always set your goal higher if it's a numeric value, as in weight gain, weight loss, or how much money you want to save, how much money you want to make, whatever that may be. You can always set it higher or set it lower based on what you did or did not achieve the year before. So I think that's a great place to start, is always just look at what you achieved last year or what you didn't and what you wanted to achieve last year, but maybe didn't get around to or didn't have the time for, or whatever the case may be. I would definitely say base it off of last year's goals so that you know where to kind of start yourself, and so that you either don't aim too low or aim too high and set yourself up for failure, because that is the last thing you want to do when you're setting goals, is set goals that you're not going to be able to complete or achieve, because that kind of defeats the whole purpose. The next tip that I have for this is to divide your goals into categories to keep yourself organized. So I don't necessarily mean like every single goal needs to be specific to something, but for me, I found it easier to set goals in different categories. So I picked 6. I picked relationships, family, personal growth, finances, fun, and work. So with those 6 goals, I was able to divide my goals that I wanted to achieve into those different categories to make it a little bit easier to separate them. And then also, whenever I was thinking about the goals, I could set myself to thinking on one specific category. So for example, work. I could think of goals that were only related to my work. Instead of having 5,000 goals just scattered around my brain, I could focus in on one thing, and that helped me to set better goals and some more specific goals that I knew that I could achieve that related to that one topic. I definitely find it easier to do it that way, just because it's easier for me to see them in my head kind of, and then whenever I put them on my vision board, it's easier for me to organize them, and it's not just a bunch of stuff thrown on a paper and I'm just like, oh my god, where do I start? So I would definitely recommend dividing your goal categories up so that it makes it a little bit easier to achieve. Maybe not easier to achieve, but easier to recognize what is important to you. The third tip that I have, and probably one of the most important ones in my opinion, is to write your goals down and make them visible. So what that means is you don't just think to yourself, oh, I want to save this much money this year. You actually write it down somewhere, and you put it somewhere, either in your office or in your room or somewhere, even if you hang it on the fridge, whatever your preference is, you put it somewhere that you can see it, so that every day when you go past it, you say, oh yeah, I need to do something to help me achieve that goal. So for me, I'm going to do a vision board this year. I've never actually done one of these actually out on paper. You know, I've had stuff on my Pinterest board, and usually I just think it to myself, but I've found that it's harder for me to stay on track, especially with like saving money or any kind of numeric goal. It's harder for me to stay on track when I don't actually keep track of it. So for example, if you're saving money and you want to save, say, $5,000 this year, and you want to actually save it, you want to save the $5,000, you don't want to spend any of it, you want to take that all into the next year, it might be easier for you to write down, save $5,000 this year, and then every dollar that you save, or every $10, every $100, whatever is easiest for you, you can tally it or something so that you can see how far you're going. So you can also track your progress. Another important thing when writing down your goals is to write them in the present tense. So don't say, next year I want to save $5,000. While that's still a good goal, it sometimes makes it easier for your brain if you say, I am currently working to save $5,000, or I'm currently saving $5,000. You don't want to put it in the future, because then that makes your brain think, oh, it's not as important, it's not coming up yet, so I don't need to work on it right now. And for some goals that may be okay, you may not need to work on specific goals right this moment, but it is always easier for your brain to register what the goal is and how important it is if you write it in the present tense. And I think studies have also shown if you write your goal in the present tense, you are more likely to achieve that goal, no matter how big or small it may be. I'm not exactly sure where I saw that, but I've seen that a couple places. So I'm going to try that this year, just because, like I said, this is kind of my first year really diving into what I want to achieve this year. So that's why I'm making this video. I'm kind of sharing my tips with you that I've learned from this year that may help me make better goals and be able to achieve more goals next year. So after you write them down, well, technically this would, I guess, come before writing them down, but you need to think about your goals in general terms. So whenever you first start thinking about them, you don't want to be super specific right off the bat, because then you're kind of limiting yourself to all the things that you could possibly achieve in the coming year. So for example, saving money. You might say, you know, I want to save money this year. That's kind of being general. And then when you think about it more, you can think, I want to save this much money. I want to save X amount of dollars, and I want to save X amount of dollars for this thing. I want to save X amount of dollars for this specific thing, maybe a trip, or for me, for a wedding, for a house, whatever that may be. But starting out, I would just say, you know, I want to save money. And then you can dive deeper into it and say how much you want to save, what specific things you want that money to go towards. If you just want to keep it in your savings as like backup money, or whatever you want to do with it, I would definitely say start out general, because then you can break off that one general goal into multiple smaller goals. And then after that, maybe you can achieve more goals than, okay, I saved money, because you could save $5. You didn't eat out this morning, so you saved $5. You know, that's technically saving money, but is that what you actually meant? So I would definitely start out general and then go more specific. I've already touched on this, but after you think of your general goal, I would go back and rewrite them in more specific terms. So kind of like I said before, you know, you don't want to just say on your vision board, on your final draft or whatever, you don't want to just say, I want to save money. You want to say, I want to save $5,000. I want to save $2,000 for a house. I want to save $2,000 for a wedding, and I want to save the other $1,000 for just to keep in savings and use as emergency funds. So then you could even go a step further and say that you want to save $100 every week, at least $100 every week, or whatever the case may be. But like I said, start out general and then go more specific, because that opens you up to a lot more possibilities once you narrow down the specifics of each goal. Another thing I really recommend is putting a time limit on your goal. So this could be as broad as this year. For example, the saving money situation. If you want to save $5,000 this year, that's a great goal to set. But if it's something else, like for me, maybe I want to say for like my side hustle with Instacart, I want to shop enough to make X amount of dollars by March. So setting a shorter time goal on certain things, especially if it may have to do with money or something like that, may help you to achieve it faster and then in turn overachieve your goal. So if you know that you're working hard to say, let's just say $600 by March. So that's $300 a month, which is really not that hard if I stick to it and do it every weekend. So if I say I want to achieve $600 through Instacart by March, then that puts me in the mindset of, okay, I need to set aside time to do Instacart this much every day or every week or whatever the case may be. And then by the time March comes, hopefully I will have overachieved that goal, and then therefore I have ended up with more money. So it's kind of like a little trick on your brain. In my opinion, that's kind of how I see it. It's really not, but in my mind, that's kind of how I see it. I'm like, okay, I have to get to this by this time, so I need to work extra hard to make sure that I don't fall short. And sometimes that can maybe be a little bit not healthy way of thinking, but as long as you know that you're not setting yourself up for failure by going too hard or pushing yourself too hard, then I think you're going to be totally fine. Another tip I have is if you're setting a numeric goal, such as weight gain, weight loss, money you want to save, money you want to make, subscribers on YouTube, whatever the case may be. If you're setting a numeric goal, be realistic with yourself. If you know that you only make minimum wage, then there's probably no way you're going to be able to save $20,000 this year, because you're most likely not even going to make that much money this year. So that was kind of an extreme example, but you kind of understand what I'm saying. Don't set yourself up for failure. Always, if you have to, this is kind of how I think of it. This again goes with the overachieving kind of thing. If you have to, set a number that you absolutely know you will achieve. Obviously, don't make it something super low like, oh, I'm going to save $10 this year, because obviously you're going to achieve that. But say you think that you can save $5,000 this year, but you're honestly not 100% sure. You have a lot of stuff going on this year. Like for me, I have wedding stuff and we're buying a house, things like that. If you know that you have things like that coming up and you typically could save $5,000, but this year you're not 100% sure, maybe only set your goal for $4,000, because then you're more likely to achieve it, and then at the same time you're more likely to overachieve that goal. Again, kind of like a reverse psychology thing. Like, you know that you most likely could, but if it will make you feel better to set yourself lower and then completely blow that goal out of the park, then I recommend doing that. Because for me, if I set a goal that I'm like, maybe I can do that, but there's also a slim chance that maybe I can't, I would definitely rather set my goal lower and then overachieve it, and then I'm gonna feel good about myself. Like, wow, I only set my goal for this, but I achieved this goal. So to me, that kind of like boosts my confidence a little bit. I don't really know if that makes sense to you guys, but to me, I find that easier sometimes to set yourself lower, especially when it comes to money, because you know, emergencies happen, accidents happen. You never know what's gonna come up in your day-to-day life. Maybe don't set yourself up for, okay, I'm gonna go over and beyond what I absolutely know I can do, because sometimes that could backfire on you. I know that sounds a little negative, but like I said, be realistic with yourself. Don't set yourself up for failure, because then once you don't achieve one goal, especially when it has to do with money or weight, I've seen a lot of times you just don't even set that goal again. You're just like, oh, well, I didn't achieve it this time, I'm not going to try again. And that's definitely not a good way to think, but that is the case for a lot of people. So I do think if it has to do with weight or numbers on YouTube or Instagram or whatever the case is with numbers, sometimes it may be better to set yourself a little lower. And I don't mean, you know, completely cut your goal in half, but like the example I gave, just $1,000 less, because over the scheme of a year, $1,000 really is not that much. So the chances of you hitting your goal are a lot better, and the chances of you overachieving your goal are also a little bit better if you aim a little bit lower. So if you're an overachiever like me, then that is a great mindset, I personally think. But if you're not and you need that set number, like, no, I have to get to this number, then by all means, set yourself that specific goal of the higher number and don't shoot yourself lower. But just for me, that seems to work a little bit better sometimes. Like, oh, I want to get this much, and then I look back and I think, oh, I actually got like $1,000 more than that, then I will feel so much better about myself. That's just a personal preference. It may not work for everyone, but again, this is just tips that have helped me. So that is one other tip that I have for you guys. Another thing to do with writing your steps down is once you have specified your goals, for example, I want to save $100 every week to equal this much this year. Go back and write down things that are going to help you achieve that goal. So for example, saving money. You can say, I'm gonna make my coffee at home 3 out of 7 days this week instead of going to Starbucks or Dunkin' every single day, because that will in the long run save me X amount of dollars. Another thing could be, I'm only gonna eat out 1 day a week instead of 3 days a week, or however your lifestyle is. Things like that. So one of my goals, I'll go ahead and tell you, is to donate some items that I don't use, clothes I don't wear, things like that. So a smaller part of that goal, how I would achieve that, is to go through my closet and see what have I not worn this year at all. Granted, this year has been a little different because everything's been closed. I haven't needed to wear that many different outfits because I don't go out as much. But just for example, in a normal year, I would say go through my closet and anything I haven't worn this year, get rid of. Unless it has some kind of sentimental value that is a realistic thing. Not just, oh, well, I wore this shirt to that concert one time and I want to keep it forever to remember that concert. Like, that's a dumb reason in my opinion. So that may be a smaller part of that goal, but it doesn't have to be, you know, something crazy big. You don't have to have 10 little items under each goal. It may just be one thing depending on how big the goal is. So if the goal is smaller, then the steps you're going to take to get to that goal may not be as many. Versus if you know, want to save $10,000 this year, you're going to have to take a lot more steps to get to that goal than you would to donate some used items. So just think of it like that. Definitely don't just say, okay, I want to save $10,000 and then you don't have a plan to do that, because you're most likely not going to be able to achieve that goal without a plan to do so. So just keep that in mind when you're setting goals. If you want to achieve this goal but you have absolutely no idea how to do that, then maybe that's not a realistic goal. That's not to say that if you have a goal you want to set and you're like, I don't know how I'm going to get there, but this is what I want to do. For example, starting a specific career. There's always a way to get started in a career, whether it be something as simple as a Google search on how to start that career, or talking to someone that you know already is in that job field or that career field or whatever that is. Just talking to them. It could be something as small as that, but it needs to be something. It needs to you need to have something to help you get to that goal, no matter how big or small it may seem. You need to have a plan to actually achieve that goal and not just say, oh, I want to achieve it, because then you're most likely not going to. One of the other most important things I will say is if you set goals and you achieve them early, you achieve them late, it doesn't matter what it is. Once you even somewhat achieve that goal, be proud of yourself, reward yourself. And that doesn't mean, you know, oh, I saved $5,000, let me go buy myself a brand new car. That's not necessarily what I mean. Don't say, okay, well, I achieved that goal and go on about your day. Take the time to sit there and think, this is what I did to achieve this goal, and be proud of yourself in that moment. Or if it means that you want to go buy yourself a nice coffee from the Starbucks, go do that. If you want to have a night out with your friends because you achieved this goal, no matter how big or small, go do that. Don't just take your goals lightly, because if you take your goals lightly, then what's the point of even achieving them if you're not proud of yourself for doing that? If you're not proud of yourself for saving all this money or losing weight or getting this many subscribers on YouTube or starting this new job in a new career field, if you're not proud of yourself for that, then what was the point in even achieving that goal? You should always be proud of yourself for moving forward and doing things that you set out to do. Because then that tells your brain, oh, I should do this more often because, you know, I feel good. I feel proud of myself. Whatever the case may be, it's always good to reward yourself, even if it is just go get a coffee at Starbucks and come back home. It's important to tell yourself, hey, I did a good job today. I've worked hard on this. I've achieved my goal. I've done what I set out to do. So in my opinion, rewarding yourself, no matter how big or small the reward may be, no matter how big or small the goal was, I think that's very important in achieving goals. Because if you're never proud of yourself, then there's really no point in moving forward and doing all these things if you have no real reason other than, oh, I want to. Like, if you don't actually care about them that much, like if it's just another thing to you, then there's really no point in even wasting your time writing down on your goals and figuring out how you're going to achieve them. Another super important thing, probably in my opinion the third most important thing after writing them down and rewarding yourself, is to evaluate your goals and change them as often as you need to. So at the beginning of 2021, something may be a goal, and then 5 months in, it may not be important to you anymore. And it's important to realize that and to either, one, say, I don't really need to achieve this goal anymore, or say, you know, this isn't important to me, I'm going to take it off the vision board, or I'm going to take it off my goal list. Because if you have a goal that's not important to you and you're seeing it every day, if you've put it, say you hung it up on your fridge, if you go past it every day and you're like, oh, I'm not achieving this goal anymore, and you're not registering to yourself that it's because it's not important to you anymore, then you're going to start to feel bad about yourself. You're going to be like, oh, I set all these goals and then I didn't achieve them. Once they're not important to you anymore, or once they're kind of on the back burner, or whatever the case may be that makes them not a priority in your life, you need to take them off, or you need to change them. So let's say, for example, you wanted to save $5,000 this year so that you could put a down payment on a house. Let's just use that as an example. And then say that someone or your job or whatever it could be gives you a huge bonus and you don't need to save that $5,000 for a down payment on a house anymore. Say you've already got that money from another source that isn't from your own personal money. You know, whether it be inheritance or you just won the lottery or whatever that may be. Let's just say that for whatever reason, you personally don't have to use your own personal money to put a down payment on a house anymore. So why would you keep that goal for a down payment on a house if you already have your down payment on a house? You could just adjust that to say, I want to save $5,000 to go towards utilities for my house for the next however many months. Or I want to save $5,000 to keep in my savings for an emergency fund. It can be something as small as that, or it could be something as big as, I want to complete my degree in this specific area and I want to get a job in this specific field. Say you go to school for that specific thing and you end up hating it. Why would you keep your goal to do that job in that field that you don't love? That doesn't make any sense to me. So in things like that, I would definitely say go back, look at your goals, realize what's still important to you a couple months in, a couple weeks in, a couple days in even if you have to. Realize what's still important to you and what's not and adjust as necessary. You don't want to keep goals on there that you don't actually care to work towards anymore because then it's just filling up space and time in your head, and in some cases it may make you feel like a failure because you're like, oh, I didn't achieve that. If it's not important to you anymore, then it doesn't matter if you achieved it, in my opinion. It's important to achieve goals that you care about. It's important to achieve goals that are actually going to make you proud of yourself and are going to enhance your life. Because if they're not and they're just goals that you're setting and they're dragging you down, then why? Why are you doing it? I would definitely ask yourself, why is this important to me if it's not making me feel good? Why is this important to me if I don't necessarily need to do this anymore to be successful or to live a happy life or whatever your reason for setting goals was? So I definitely think that it is important to continually go back over your goals and see what's important to you, what's no longer important to you, what is important to you but maybe not a top priority anymore. Maybe it's lower on the list than you thought it would be or than it was before. Whatever the case may be, always go back and reevaluate your goals and rewrite them, take them off, add to them, add more ways to achieve them. If you need to set new goals, then do that. But don't continue to look at goals and dwell on goals that you don't care about, because that's not only bad for your mental health, but it's not doing you any good to have goals that you do not care a single bit about achieving, because if you don't care about them, you're not going to work towards them, and that's just a fact. So always go back and reevaluate and reassess and rewrite and just completely redo if you need to. But don't ever keep goals that are not important to you, that are not a priority, that don't make you feel good about yourself, that don't make you proud to think about achieving them. If it's not doing any of those things, get that crap off your goal list, because it is just tearing you down and you don't even realize it. So I would definitely always go back, maybe not every day because that's kind of a lot, maybe every month, every other month. Don't set your goals in January and wait till October and go back and be like, oh, well, I need to mark this off, I need to mark this off, because these aren't important. Of course you can still do that, but if you're going back every month or every other month, it's going to affect you more. It's going to be a more positive effect, because if you're waiting till the year's completely over just about to say, oh, well, this isn't important to me, well, then you don't have time to either reevaluate that goal and reset that goal. You don't have time to do that because the year is almost over, and if that is your whole point, is to set goals for the year, then going back at the end is not going to really do you any good. So I definitely think the 3 major takeaways from my tips to achieve your goals in 2021 is to write them down, write them in the present tense. Number 2 would be to reward yourself no matter what you achieve, whether it's a super tiny little piece of a goal or if it's the whole goal in itself plus some. Reward yourself. No matter how big or small the reward is, no matter how big or small the goal is, reward yourself. And number 3, as I just spent so much time talking about, reevaluate your goals and change them when you need to. Change them when they're not a priority anymore. Change them when you don't care about that goal anymore. Change them when you have life changes that may affect how you achieve that goal. You may agree, you may disagree, but for me, this is what I've seen work. Even though I didn't write my goals down this year, I definitely think if I would have written them down and looked at them every single day or every week even, I think that would have helped me a lot in achieving those goals, because I would have been able to see them. You know, stuff I set at the beginning of the year, I may not remember, especially the small little things that may not seem super important, but they're all part of a bigger picture. I definitely think the small ones that you need to write those down, especially the small ones. The big ones too, of course, but the big ones you're more likely to remember and think about more often. In the next couple videos, I'm going to share with you what my goals are, and I'm going to make a vision board. I'm pretty sure I'm just going to share with you the actual vision board making process. If you're interested in that, come back tomorrow for more. But if you like this video, make sure you give it a thumbs up and hit the subscribe button down below, and I will be back again tomorrow with part 2 of this video.